Hey everybody, we're here with Erin Vestal, and Erin work is our role as agents, with budget and all the fun things about sales and why it's important, and also anything that we need to know that can make it easier when we're looking for that. Erin Vestal, please take it away.
I'm Erin Fesco. Um, I am a real estate attorney and have a title insurance agency. I have been doing this since February of 2006, so it's a long time. This feels like forever. And I spent some time over the weekend trying to think about some things that I wanted to talk about today. And one thing that kept coming up is there is not a one size fits all title explanation that I can give you. I tried to come up with some garden variety examples of title insurance, but every contract that we have, every case is unique. Our clients are unique, the property is unique, and therefore, because of that, the title process is it's going to be unique. And I say that because title insurance isn't simply just a matter of let's do a title search, let's type up a commitment, and let's get it done. The problem arises in that because every property it has its own history, has its own story. And a lot of times we don't even consider that story or what it is until after we're all under contract. Attorneys are approving, sending it back and forth, inspections are starting, and then attention is finally starting to be focused on title. I can tell you right away that most title companies, whether you're an attorney who does title or whether you're also just an independent agency, we will not order a title search until the buyer has mortgage commitment. The reason is that as the title company, I have to pay for a title search, and they can be expensive depending on the county that the property is located. Some like Schenectady County, Warren County, Washington County, searches can be a lot more expensive. You have a lot more manpower in those counties willing to do the search work, and so they charge more. And as the person ordering the title, I I don't get paid if the file doesn't close. So if we have a borrower and they get a mortgage commitment letter, as the attorney, I'm going to review that commitment letter and I'm going to give it a serious look over because what kind of commitment letter? Commitment letters from mortgage lenders are often hidden conditions that can completely impact the validity of that commitment letter. There are sometimes, commitment letters that have conditions that are likely not going to be satisfied. And that prompts me to have a frank conversation with the loan officer, whoever is working on it, mortgage broker, loan officer, to say, you know, what are your thoughts on these conditions? Have you discussed these conditions with the borrower? What is your sense that these are conditions that we're going to be able to satisfy? Um, you know, it's a tough situation because a lot of times you're asking a loan officer to project what they feel a borrower is going to be able to, to satisfy. Um, and I'm not talking about a commitment letter that just says subject to a satisfactory appraisal. To me, that's a pretty great, solid commitment letter. If that's one of the only conditions a that a bank is asking for, it's those conditions. When a bank starts wanting, letters of explanation, or they haven't actually seen the bank statements, or there's these unexplained deposits in their bank accounts. These are things that can be hurdles that can actually take a commitment letter and turn it into nothing. It's basically worthless. And that's something that I would recommend that everybody take a look at the commitment letter so that we all know what we're facing going forward. Nobody wants to spend money that they can't recoup, especially in a business sense. I don't want to pay for a title search if my client is going to ultimately get denied despite that conditional commitment letter.
There are some lenders, few and far between, if the contract will pay offer. Your
Yeah.
experience with the companies
Very few and far between. In fact, this is the first I've ever heard of it. I have had to eat a lot of search fees, and it's tough. Talking like on average $300 for a title search. It can be more in some of those surrounding counties. It has made a lot of real estate attorneys and title companies, very hesitant to go ahead and order a search, which that leads me to the search. Back to
what is this?
So the
What is
search.
title?
So your title search is a search of the history of the property. We want to find out what that story is that I mentioned earlier. Every property has a history. Who's owned it? How long have they owned it for? Did they have mortgages? What type of people were those owners? Were they judgment prone? People who didn't pay their credit card bills? Were they people who were defendants in litigation? And the reason I mention judgments and litigation, because what does this have to do with real estate, is that a judgment, and a judgment can come as a result of litigation, or it can just come as a default because Discover Card sues you and you don't show up, and now you have a default judgment against you. Those judgments attach to any real property that you own. And so, yes. Well, they have to renew a judgment after 10. So the creditor does have to be diligent, and some of these creditors do let things go after 10 years, but they do attach to any real property you own. You also need to know, was the property in foreclosure? Was the foreclosure done correctly? There's a lot of things that a title search tells you. Now, there are times where I will order, and I should mention, it's customary to go back 40 years. So unless you're in a county that does abstracts, so once you get west, like I know Schenectady, they claim to be an abstract county, but they're really not. I mean, the sellers are all just paying for searches. No one is. I haven't had a Schenectady County abstract. I can't remember. Actually, I did have one, and it was only because the city bought it and prepared it and gave it to me. That's the only Schenectady abstract I've had. But once you get west of Schenectady, they are abstract counties. I don't know if anyone does any business once you get west of Schenectady, but abstracts will take you back with more than 40 years. But for your Garden Grove, Albany County, Saratoga County, these surrounding, immediate surrounding counties, we go back 40 years. And 40 years, the magic number, primarily is because it's the longest amount that you can have in a mortgage plus 10 years. So you can't get a mortgage for longer than 30 years. I mean, yes, you can refinance in the future, but still your ownership is going to go back in date. So 40 years is considered safe. Any foreclosures, any judgments, any blemishes on title. So you can think of title insurance very similar to a car's title. Our deeds are real property title. When you hand a deed over, it's the same as signing the title over to your car. So a lot of the principles are the same. If you were buying a car from someone privately, you would want to do a lien search on the car's title to make sure that they could convey clean title to you. That is the purpose of title insurance, to make sure the seller can convey clean and marketable title. That is the whole purpose. And the only way you can find out if the seller and convey clean, marketable title is to search the county records. The county records is where all records relating to real property are held. So the county clerk of each county in New York State is responsible for maintaining real property records. A search, which is completely necessary, is going to be what is used to uncover any title defects. And they can take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. The reason I give a range is because in the summer months, I would anticipate title searches taking longer than, I would say, 3 weeks, give or take. And it's got nothing, it may have nothing to do with the title company, the client, the mortgage approval, the real estate agents involved. We could all be working together and everything could be clicking along. And now it's summer and the very few searchers that are available are slammed. And now your title search is one of 100 that the searcher has to do, and you just have to wait your turn. There are months where searchers are not busy, and I can get a search in like 3 days. It's wonderful, but it doesn't happen often. So it's hard to budget time. I wish I could give you just a magical, this is how long it takes, and this is what we can do to be done. But I've had some searchers who, it'll take 2 weeks, no matter what time of year it is, no matter how busy they are. And then I have searchers who will say, you know what, I'm not busy, I can do your search, but the search you sent me is a mess. This property has changed hands 16 times in 40 years, and now I've had that searcher has to search each owner for judgments and liens. Even though if it's more than 10 years ago, let's say that we have a property owner that was 2 owners ago, it was 15 years ago. At the time that property owner sold, the next owner in title, were there any open judgments or mortgages against that person? Did those judgments and mortgages get satisfied at that closing? If not, you have a complete mess up in the chain of title, and you have title claims.
And just to when somebody does physical 15 records at the
Yes.
county clerk, you can imagine it's people. It's people doing
Yep. Yep.
So
That's
that's why
absolutely
you
correct.
miss that or and never got recorded.
Right.
They
Well,
had a stack
actually,
of
I
papers and
just had a situation like this arise where in 2013 we did a closing. The seller had a very small private mortgage. It was $15,000, and it was a seller-held mortgage from their prior owner. The mortgagee, who is actually in the lender's situation, passes away before the mortgagors want to sell. So we have a payoff letter from the executrix of the estate saying there was actually nothing owed on the mortgage. So there's no payoff letter. She just writes a letter saying the mortgage is paid. I will issue a satisfaction. So I have a letter from the executrix. And because there was nothing owed, the letter goes in a file and everybody closes and they go on their merry, happy way. So 6 years later, these people want to sell, and that mortgage, that $15,000 mortgage, is still open of record. So meaning the executrix did not file that satisfaction. And now this is 6 years ago, and we have a new title company who did a search of the records. They discovered that this mortgage was still open, and we now have to get it satisfied. Even though it's 6 years later, we have to have evidence and we have to literally close that mortgage of record with the county. We can't just be like, oh, there was nothing owed, let's just move on. Like, title insurance companies are going to require that gets satisfied. So that's why every owner in that 40-year chain of title, they are searched individually. So if you have a searcher who now has to search 16 different parties for judgments and liens and mortgages going back 40 years, that can take a long time. And they are not privy to the dates that we all have agreed to in our contract. They don't know that, okay, you know what, like, we're supposed to be closing in a week. Even if you tell them that, you don't want to put that kind of pressure on a searcher. Even though I have asked for expedited service before, there's a difference between asking for some expedited service and pressuring somebody to meet a deadline because all the parties want to close. That is when mistakes happen. That is when things get missed. And it can take weeks when you're having to search that many names at the county clerk's office. And yeah, to follow up on what Tori said, there is literally a person that goes to the county. And while a lot of it is electronic now, like, Schenectady County is a county that don't ever rely on the electronic records. They index things funny. When I say indexing, every real estate document, whether it's a deed or a mortgage, is indexed by all of the names of parties that appear. So you'll have, for each buyer, their name will be indexed. For each seller, their name will be indexed. And for the mortgage lender, their name is indexed. And if somebody makes a mistake at the county clerk, because remember, people were accident prone, whether we like to admit it or not, you have someone at the county clerk who's just doing data entry. And if they make a mistake, if they misspell something, that can completely throw off someone's title search. So that is a reason why searchers have to be very careful and diligent and actually go to the county clerk. As much as I know a lot of them would love to be able to just log on and search online, it's a really bad idea. And that's what really can take a title search, or what causes a title search to take so long, is because there are these unknown factors and we don't know them until the searcher sits down and starts the work. And so we have this timeline in our minds that we all want to meet. And then we have a mortgage commitment, that finally comes, and the title search is not getting ordered until then, for the most part. So now you have a mortgage commitment, and you've got at least 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, for a title search just to come in. Once the title search comes in, it is submitted electronically to the attorney or the agent who ordered the search. And that attorney or agent now has to read it. You have to read a 40-year minimum search history report of the title. And you have to read the whole thing. Sometimes I've had a 40-year search that's 10 pages, easy, I'm done. And I've had ones that are vast, 100 pages or more. When you're selling a subdivision or a community that has deed restrictions and, okay, that's when you're going to have 100+ pages, because the covenants get filed and they get amended, and then you have maps and the maps get amended, and the legal descriptions or boundary lines that have changed, and now you have to renew, right, water-made easements, mechanics liens. Like, I'm telling you, like, this stuff has been happening all over the place, and these types of title defects have been showing up, and the searches are outrageously long and extremely time consuming to read through. And
Seems like a good. What's the difference between a lender? Why is it?
all right, so title insurance, first of all, is required. at least the lender's title policy. It is required. If you are a borrower taking out a mortgage, you don't have an option. You must buy a lender's policy of title insurance. Title insurance for the lender, it is giving them insurance, just like any other insurance that we would buy, that the property is free and clear of title defects that would harm a lender's interest. So a lender is loaning, in most cases, over $100,000. They want to know that their lien is secured. So they're going to have a borrower sign a note and mortgage at closing, and that mortgage is going to go with their deed to the county clerk, and it is going to be recorded, and it is going to create a lien on that property. Now, liens take precedent in order of filing. So the reason why title insurance for a lender is so important, why it's mandatory. So if we don't do a title search and we don't know that our seller has a mortgage and our seller has a $50,000 judgment, and we let this close and we don't, and the lender's title insurance doesn't have title insurance, well, the lender's lien is not in first lien position. The seller's mortgage is in first lien position. The seller's judgment is in second lien position, and now our new mortgage is in third position. And so title insurance is given to the lender to promise that lender and ensure that their lien is in first position. So a title search will flush out what those defects are and what we have to accomplish in order to give that lender first lien position. An owner's policy is optional, but because you are forced to pay for a lender's policy, you are given an opportunity to receive the same coverage as the lender receives, but for a much less. So you would pay a full premium, and premiums are based on your loan amount for a loan policy. You would receive the same coverage for a fraction of the cost. So it's not like you would then be paying a full premium based on your sale price, which is what the owner's title premiums are based on. So if this was a cash deal, you would just do an owner's policy and you pay full price. That's because you would not be paying for a loan policy. Owner's policies are optional because the bank, they have their loan policy, so they don't care whether you get an owner's policy or not. They only care that their interest is protected. I used to not push owner's policies. I'd say maybe in the past 8 years, I've started to push them. Maybe 6 to 8 years, I've started to really push them. Because as I have been doing this, I have discovered people don't do what they say they're going to do, and people make a lot of mistakes. And I've had a lot of really messy title searches that I feel when I'm advising a client, owner's title is so cheap and it's a one-time premium. This is not a reoccurring premium like homeowners insurance where you have to pay every year. This is a one-time premium, and relatively speaking, it's not expensive. And it will protect them as long as they are the owners of that property. And, just like other insurance, we pay for it hoping that we never need it. So, the argument that this is a waste of money, well, not really. I mean, we buy insurance hoping not to need it. So this should make sense, especially in real property. As a purchaser, you're investing a lot of money into this. I think that you would want to have the same insurance that your lender is given. That way, if you have a claim, you can file your claim. Because, good luck trying to get your lender to file a claim. As long as you're making your payment and they don't feel their mortgage is threatened, they're not going to step in and help you.
Not 20.
Mhm.
They
Right?
Pretty much is here's a copy of my thing, no matter what it would be, it's all covered, you know, somebody to go
Right, and and a lot of times, especially now, a lot of title companies are not accepting affidavits. It used to be there were some affidavits that a title company would accept. I'll give an example. One is an ancient mortgage affidavit. So if there was an open mortgage, kind of going back to that example I was telling you about earlier about this small seller held mortgage that never got satisfied, because that was two owners prior, we used to do an ancient mortgage affidavit where the current seller would say, hey, look, I've owned this property for 6 years. No one has tried to collect from me. No one has tried to foreclose on this property. This wasn't my mortgage. I've owned the property peacefully and uninterrupted. And that used to appease title companies. It's not appeased. It's not working anymore. They want those satisfactions. And without those satisfactions, title companies are holding up closings and holding them up indefinitely until they're obtained. And if so in my example, luckily the executrix was still alive, even though she's in her 80s, and was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot to do that. I'll sign a satisfaction now. So okay, great. We see. But what if she hadn't been around?
You tell me.
That seller would have pulled out his owner's policy, which he had, and the title insurance company would have had to have indemnified the new title insurance company and would have had to have paid any monies necessary in order to clear the title so that they could sell. Yes. Here's the thing, like, you can go online, and I highly recommend, if you want to ever discuss title premiums with any of your clients, like Chicago Title, First American Title, if you Google First American Title Insurance Rate Calculator, there will be a free rate calculator that will come up. You'll check New York, you'll check title fees, and then you'll just put in the loan amount and the purchase price, and it will tell you a breakdown of what your title premiums are. So if you're looking for a ballpark, just to help someone understand what would an owner's policy cost you, because remember, they're paying for a loan policy anyway. So they are given the owner's policy, and it's based on the purchase price and the loan amount, which is why that calculator is very helpful, because I can't just give you a mathematical formula, because every loan amount against its purchase price are going to be different. So you would need to enter in that data and get your title premiums, and then you can say to somebody, look, this is what you have to pay for the loan policy, and then for $350 more, you get that same coverage, and you're covered for as long as you own that property.
I own a buyer ever in almost because I've worked with a lot of their process is not.
Nope. And I have a very good example of this happening right now in Washington County. Bay Street Abstract is doing the title. This attorney, Jane Reed, she's an attorney, but she really just does titles. She focuses on titles. She does not do a lot of private representation. A lot of attorneys up in Washington and Warren County use her. She's very good. She's very knowledgeable in this subject. She has a title order. She processed it. There was a foreclosure. And from what you can gather in a foreclosure, there's limited documents available in a foreclosure. I mean, the important ones are available, but she's sifting through. She sees that it appears on the surface that the foreclosure was done correctly. A referee was appointed. The listing agent gets a phone call from the woman who was foreclosed on. She's this elderly lady who has been in a nursing home. And she is like, you can't take my property. Nobody ever served me with foreclosure. I have been in a nursing home for however long, and I've got no notice. But I hear from my friend that there's a for sale sign at my house, and where's all my stuff? Like, you can't just. So now, well, that's so now the title for now is a big red flag, and the title company will not let this close because now we have to prove that this woman was personally served. So a lot of times, if you can't make personal service, you can do a mail and mail. So you leave the foreclosure notice service there and you mail it. But what if this person's in a nursing home and they're not going to come back to the property to see or to receive that mail and nothing gets forwarded to them? How do you prove they were ever not properly known? And when it comes to foreclosure of someone's primary residence, typical service of process rules do not apply. You have to have have to effectuate some form of personal service. There has to be some kind of an acknowledgement that service was made. Because right now they can't prove that, this file is not going to close. And it's very interesting to wait and find out what's going to happen because you have a foreclosure, they probably just pushed the foreclosure through. They probably didn't really try to find her. And now you have someone disputing a foreclosure and you have a buyer who's trying to buy it and under contract. I mean, you've gotten this far and now you're doing a title search and I honestly don't know what's going to happen. This might be a deal that falls through because the bank didn't do its due diligence in a foreclosure. But I can tell you the title insurance company is refusing to insure it right now, unless the bank can come forward with affidavits of personal service. And if they can, then that would clear their title defect. They would have a leg to stand on against this woman who's claiming to have never been not properly notified. But until they can prove otherwise, they are not going to be able to actually sell this property, or at least not going to be able to sell it to a buyer who can get title insurance, even if it's a cash buyer. The same searching principles are going to apply, even it doesn't matter if it's a loan policy or an onus policy or both. The search process is the same. The rationale behind it is the same. And you're still trying to offer that insurance that the title is clear and marketable.
So what is our role as agents, buyer's agent, or even a listing? How can we make this process smoother for attorneys? How can we be your ally?
Sure.
What expectations can we set
I'd say first and foremost, especially on the listing agent side, from the very beginning, if you can ask your client, do you have an owner's policy of your own? If so, do you have any title documents or any documents from when you purchased? Any documents that we can have up front will help the title process because, it's one thing if I hand my searcher a list of names and a property address. If I can hand my searcher a copy of the recorded deed and an owner's policy, and I can give that to them, they can use that to really target the beginning of their search because searches are actually conducted from current day backwards. So they don't start 40 years. They start present day with the current owner and they work their way back in time and then they cross people off. If you've ever seen a searcher's notes on a search report, there's boxes and there's check marks because they have to check off for each name judgments, tax liens, bankruptcy, they have to mortgages, and every time they find a mortgage, they have to do a double check for a satisfaction. These search reports are intense. So any documentation we can offer a searcher that would help them begin their search and focus it in that manner is always helpful. I realize that it's, most times people are like, I never got my owner's policy, or I never got my deed, or I can't find it. That's very common. But I think just asking if you can get it, great. Also, the tax bill. Now, lately, a lot of the municipalities have been changing their systems so that they can put the tax bills online, and that's so helpful. But like the town of Colony refuses. I don't know why. I don't know why. They have
Who do we need to vote?
well, David Green is on the town board. He's another attorney who does real estate. So I always give him a hard time. I'm like, you're on the town board and you do real estate law. Can't you do something about this? Like, I mean, you guys it's not like they don't have a sophisticated website. You can email the tax collectors directly from their website. Easy peasy.
Even
I know. Most of them do. But when you start getting to some of these smaller municipalities, these smaller towns and hamlets that have, a tax collector that works part-time twice a year, like if they have even if it's a receipt, because even if someone has a mortgage lender and they have an escrow account for their taxes, they're still going to get receipts after their escrow service provider pays those taxes. They're going to get a receipt after the fact. So any tax receipts are super helpful, because if, sometimes these searchers have to do tax searches over the phone by calling the tax collectors. And, if it's not a hot time of year, like if it's not January or September, then it's very hard to get in touch with some of these tax collectors, especially in these outlying towns where you have maybe real rural area. You'll have someone who's the town assessor and clerk and tax collector all in one. And that can also cause delays in the title searches. From a title insurance perspective, the reason taxes are so important is because a tax foreclosure will take precedence over the mortgage. So even though your lender is going to be getting a purchase money mortgage, they have first lien position. If any unpaid back taxes are missed by the title company or the searcher, that's going to cause big problems. And that's another reason why you'll want title insurance, because if back taxes are missed and you're the owner's and you have an owner's policy and you get a notice from the county that they're foreclosing on taxes, you're going to want to file a claim on your owner's policy right away and make your title insurance company pay those taxes before your lender gets wind of it. Because when the lender finds out that the taxes are not paid, they will pay them, because they will not allow any threats to their lien. So even though you've already closed and you have your mortgage, this could be, a year or two after the fact. If they get wind that there has been any unpaid back taxes and that the county is going to foreclose, the lender will step in, they will pay those taxes, and then they will tack that onto your mortgage and make you pay back. Whereas if you have an owner's policy, you can get in front of it and file a claim and get that paid by your owner's policy. That's not to say you couldn't still use your owner's policy to get your money back later, but that process is going to be a whole lot more cumbersome, and is another really good example of why I think you should have an owner's policy, because some municipalities that do post taxes online, they don't put the payment status. So you can see that, okay, here's the tax bill, this is what was, but you still have to follow it up with a phone call. And, and that just leaves room for human error, in my opinion, when you're having to call and cross-check information with someone on the phone. You can't see what they're looking at. So are they looking at the correct property address? Did they enter in the wrong section, block, and lot number as you verbally tell it to them? I think it opens up a lot of potential for error. So I think that it would be very helpful if you asked your clients for tax bills, or receipts.
On that note, you need to find the online. You can always ask me, but there is a few websites that are pretty. What I do, I mean, I've compiled a list of links in my browser, but if I don't know, I just Google, Clifton Park Town.
Yeah.
Town tax. If you see any website addresses that are NERIC, NERIC, that's a search site for taxes. BASGov, so B as in boy, A as in apple, S as in gov, or eGov, whole lot. They have all the searches, all the tax ones. And the other one is, I think it's Infotech Online.
Yep, Infotest Online, and there's
And then there's also like Washington, they're all on this solution. And if you basically find out all the different municipalities listed on the municipality website, or they say, the tax bills are public. And they'll say total collection is a little bit harder to navigate, but you don't have a full info on it, like misdemeanor, public.
yeah, public is the
Password. So ask if you need help. But, you're looking at the website. And a lot of searches I've done. Sometimes you have to search differently. So, easiest way to search is usually by fingers down. If you don't know that, type in the name of the street without any and then you search for the next one. And then as a final resort, I usually search by the tax number. So the tax ID number is 3 numbers long, that's separated by hyphen, section block and mark. And I usually if I can't find it at the end of the day, I'll search for it. And usually it will stay on the spell because sometimes it'll be under like mine, for example, I just told, and it was still under mine. It was still under my name. You won't find my maiden name listed anywhere else but on my tax. So it only pulled up as mine. So an example of why you sometimes have to search differently.
right, and actually that triggers an example in a title search of why a search can go from seemingly simple to complicated because a searcher may say, okay, I'm going to search under Victoria Romeo. Then they realize that there's no judgments against you, everything looks good, but then they see you have a maiden name, and now they have to do those same searches against your maiden name. Because what if there's a judgment against the client? So that's very common and can make a title search even more lengthy, and those are documents that would be included. So a searcher would search your maiden name and your married name, and they would do the same searches like from judgments, liens, mortgages. And when I say liens, primarily, I mean tax liens. The IRS loves to slap tax liens on people on their real property. And because they will rapid fire file them, the IRS is generally pretty good at releasing them, but it's not immediately apparent that the tax lien has been released. You actually have to really look at it because they're sneaky in the way they file their release. It's almost like they submit it electronically and the county clerk has to just stamp it. And then if they don't index it correctly, it can cause a real tough spot.
I
So,
can't, how much, how much letter or the
they actually didn't take a long time because of abstracts. So back in the day, and I see these abstracts because I do real estate all the way through Western New York. Western New York is an abstract area, and I get these ancient books delivered to me by FedEx from these attorneys who you can tell this is the original paper. The paper has typewriter, it's old and brown, and every time property changes hands, the book is updated. So you don't need to go back 40 years. The 40 years is right there in your hands.
You might have 150 years.
You might have 150 years. All you're doing is basically a last owner search, which is what you would do for a refinance. You're just searching maybe the seller and maybe one owner prior, sometimes just to make myself feel better. I will ask a searcher to do a 2-owner search. If I have an abstract, I'll say, I just want a 2-owner search because I've got everything else I need. And then I'll make sure that searcher, what his or her results are matching up with what I have in that abstract. Because even these abstracts, what's good about them is that you have your seller, they hand me as a buyer's attorney this abstract, and it's been updated to current. Then they do a lot of their closings at the county clerk. Then at the closing, they hand the abstract to a title company that sits there at the county clerk and then enters in your buyer's stuff. So if your buyer has a mortgage, they're going to put that mortgage and their deed into that abstract for you. And then you'll get the final abstract like a week or so after everything's been recorded. They'll mail it to you. And now you have an abstract that is completely current, even with the buyer's stuff. So when that buyer eventually goes to sell, they have the search all the way up to the day they close, and they can hand that over. And these abstracts are certified by, licensed title insurance agents or attorneys. In many cases, do these abstracts. I don't know how they do it, but they do them, and they are extremely accurate, and they travel with the property indefinitely. So those are situations where I can have a purchase and a search will not take very long at all because of that. But because Albany County, Rensselaer County, Saratoga County, and then all those here, especially south, they don't do abstracts at all. You are literally having to recreate the search. So if a seller has any back title, I'm always all for, I will be happy to receive any back title any seller has to offer. It does help tremendously streamline the searching process. But unfortunately, it's really rare that you're going to get a seller who's like, oh yeah, I have my owner's policy and I have my search. I have been storing my searches on my server so that if any of my clients who have title insurance, especially in these counties where the seller is responsible for paying for the search, I've been letting them know I have your 40-year search. So, and it's in a PDF format. I can email it, so if you're ever in a situation where you're now selling your home, I can help your buyer out by emailing the search.
Aaron's a fantastic.
Thank you. I started doing it about 4 years ago, is when I started, I used to receive searches in facsimile, and I would have to just keep them in my file. But then, a few years ago, I started being like, you know what, people are going to need this, they're going to want it, and, most of the time they're paying for it. Even though, there's rules about when you can and can't charge a search fee, most of the time you can charge a search fee. So I end up getting, I get my money back on that search. So it's just like an inspection report, an appraisal. The buyer is paying for those things. They have a right to them. So that's kind of what I've started doing is I've started receiving all my searches as a PDF. So I've started requiring that searchers who do searches for me, no more fax. Half the time, especially if you've got 50 pages, I don't want a fax search, especially if you have an old deed. They don't copy well, you can't read them. So I have been housing them, and I do have searches now available for people that are on a PDF. So I'm sure I'm not the only one who does that. I would think most of us are now doing that because we all are relying so much on email and electronic media that I find it hard to believe that I'm the only one who's housing all these searches on some kind of electronic medium. But they're expensive to recreate. and they are timely to recreate, and that's really going to be what's going to hold up the title, is going to be maybe lack of communication between the parties, a really messy mortgage commitment is going to hold things up. And then also, how busy everybody is. That's definitely, I've started using some national searching companies that I kind of use them to sort of fill in. They still have to send somebody to the county clerk to do a face-to-face. But the benefit I am deriving from these bigger searching companies is, one, they have better turnaround time. They will give you when they expect to have your title search to you, so you can monitor it. They will give you email updates on the status of your search, and they have been inputting data automatically into my title insurance software platform, which has cut down on my time tremendously. I can't speak for other attorneys or agents because I don't know what software they use. Title insurance software can be very expensive, so I understand that some smaller operations would be hesitant to use software, but the software that I use my searchers will put the search into this software, and my software puts all the data into a title insurance commitment, which kind of brings me to that part of the phase that I know causes some people aggravation. I know it causes some clients and different parties some frustration because we have a title search, it's in, and now we got to do all this reading, and it's not just reading of the title search, it's inputting data into a title insurance commitment. So when you hear the phrase, is title in, most of the time they really mean is the commitment ready. It's the title insurance commitment, which is basically a report on what was found in the title search. It's not an exhaustive report on the title report. It is a best hits. Okay, it's what do we have to focus on to get to closing? What is the title company going to make us do before they will let us close? That's where you'll see there are 2 open mortgages. There is 3 judgments against this seller. But is it our seller? Isn't it? We don't know. We have to find out because a lot of people have similar names, same names. So
today,
yeah.
My husband had to sign an affidavit essentially between the time that the title search was done and the time that we closed today. Somebody with my husband's name filed for bankruptcy.
Yep.
So at the closing today, my husband had to run back over because he pre-signed to certify that he is not the John Romeo that has a bankruptcy open against.
And that kind of stuff, they're gonna put that in the title commitment. They're gonna say, title insurance is subject to these things, these conditions. So it's very similar to a mortgage commitment. A title insurance commitment is going to say, we are going to give you this insurance in exchange for you doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And it's listed on what's called the Schedule B of a title insurance commitment. It will alert both sides. So a buyer's attorney, a seller's attorney will be put on notice as to what further work or jobs they have to do. If they have to get a judgment payoff letter, that takes time, especially if you have a credit card judgment. Your creditors, they use these debt collection law firms that if you're the attorney, you want to call one of them, they're not going to talk to you. You're not the debtor. They don't have authorization to speak to you. They don't want you to pay the judgment. They want the interest to keep. So they're going to give you a really hard time. So now the attorney has to go and get a judgment or an authorization to speak to a third party that they have to fax to a judgment creditor. So this is just another example of title problems that we can't foresee in the beginning of the transaction. And these are classic examples, and they come up a lot. Don't get me wrong, like I have had plenty of title searches that have come back messy, just uh, very time consuming. And and Tori asked, what can you guys do that would help? Um, I guess having open communication and a good relationship with between the attorney and the title company, I think is going to be super beneficial, because I know in my situation, if I have a messy title, I might really need some help tracking down some of these things. And I think I've always been a proponent that us working together will make things happen a lot faster than one of us just going in alone. 'Cause there's always going to be one of us is going to see the client more frequently or talk to them more frequently, and have the ability to get things that are requested from the title company. But I wish that title could be a simple process. It's just not, and I found it even more recently. There's been so much sloppy work that's been going on, and I blame the attorneys completely for it. I don't know if we're overworked or what the deal is, but I've had a lot of deeds that had messy legal descriptions, or I had one deed. The county clerk filed it. The deed was not notarized. Someone's stamp was on it, but no one actually notarized it. And the county clerk didn't even notice it. But that is a problem. That's a title problem, and that's a problem that would prevent me from issuing an owner's policy or a loan policy. Because someone could dispute that was their signature because it wasn't notarized. So now you would have a prior owner being able to claim, I never signed that. So again, and the attorney who, I won't name her name, but uh, her stamp was there. She never signed her client's deed. I also blame the county clerk. You don't record something that's not properly in proper format. And so we had to do a whole bunch of new conveyancing documents. We had to go back and get that person to actually sign a new deed and have it properly notarized. So I've been giving you examples of what can make a title process take forever. And it's frustrating for everybody. I know, especially when you have a client who wants to close. They're like, well, my bank says I'm clear to close, but the title is not ready. And then everybody gets mad at the title company because they believe it's their fault that there's these delays. But unfortunately, it's the fact that every single property is so unique and the circumstances are unique. I can never, I wish I could project. You can just regurgitate everything.